Okay, so we're diving deep today into The Great Gatsby.
A classic.
Yeah, and we've got some great material to work with.
From those first few chapters.
Right, straight from Project Gutenberg.
Which is fantastic. Makes these books so accessible.
For free. I mean, who doesn't love that?
Absolutely.
But the goal today is not just to rehash the plot. We want to see what Fitzgerald is doing in these opening pages. Setting the stage, introducing us to these characters.
The world they inhabit.
Exactly, and all those little clues he drops about what's to come.
The undercurrents.
Yes, those are the best part.
Definitely where the real depth lies.
Okay, so let's start with our narrator, Nick Carraway. This guy's from a pretty solid Midwestern family, right?
3 generations, he tells us. Well-to-do people.
Yeah, and there's that whole bit about tracing his lineage back to a duke.
But the real money's in hardware. Started by his grandfather's brother back in 1851.
The guy who managed to avoid fighting in the Civil War.
An interesting detail there.
It is. Sets up this idea of a family that's comfortable, established, but not exactly flashy, you know?
Right. And that becomes a key contrast later on when Nick encounters this world of, well, let's just say less conventional wealth in the East.
And morals. Don't forget the questionable moral.
Absolutely.
But back to Nick. He goes to Yale, graduates in 1915. Same class as his dad, actually.
A family tradition.
Seems like it. And then he goes off to fight in the Great War.
Which he seems to have actually enjoyed.
Yeah, it's kind of strange, right? You don't expect someone to say that about war.
Especially a war like that.
But it definitely leaves him restless. Like, suddenly the Midwest feels too small. He calls it the ragged edge of the universe.
That's that classic post-war disillusionment,
Big
right?
time. Like, the world's been turned upside down.
Certainties are gone.
So what does he do? He heads east, spring of 22. Like so many others, he's drawn to the booming bond business.
Hoping to cash in on that post-war economic wave.
Everyone's chasing the dream. And his family's reaction is interesting. They're supportive, but there's this hesitant, why yes, you know?
A little uncertainty about this whole East Coast adventure.
For sure.
Like they see the allure, but also the potential dangers.
Definitely. And then he ends up in West Egg.
The less fashionable of the two, as he puts it.
Which is an understatement. He finds this, I don't even know what to call it, this ramshackle little bungalow.
Weather-beaten cardboard is how he describes it.
Yeah, for $80 a month. Briefly, he gets a dog, has this Finnish housekeeper who's always muttering these cryptic pronouncements. It all creates this sense of Nick being kind of isolated, right?
Very much an observer.
On the fringes of this world he's entered.
Right. And that distinction between West Egg and East Egg is crucial. It immediately establishes this hierarchy, this social and economic divide.
Old money versus new money.
Exactly. And Nick, with his relatively modest means, is caught somewhere in between.
Yeah, but here's the funny thing. He gets over that loneliness pretty quickly, just by giving directions to a newcomer.
He's suddenly a guide, an original settler.
It's like he's grasping at any connection he can find.
And it speaks to his character, too, that eagerness to belong.
For sure. He's embracing this new chapter with this whole life beginning again mentality.
The American myth of reinvention.
Absolutely. Okay, but now let's talk about his neighbor. To his right, it's not even a house, it's a palace.
Gatsby's mansion.
This colossal affair. Fitzgerald goes all out describing it. It's like a replica of some French Hotel de Ville with a tower, new ivy, a marble pool, acres and acres of land.
It's this over-the-top display of wealth, almost an imitation of European aristocracy.
Yeah, like he's trying too hard to prove something.
Which of course he is.
And right next door is Nick's little shack. He calls it a small eyesore. But then he says he finds consoling proximity of millionaires.
That's such a great line.
It really is. It's like he's both drawn to this world of extravagance.
And slowly repulsed by it.
Exactly. Okay, so let's cross the water to East Egg, where the old money resides. The Buchanans. Their house is immediately striking. It's all airy and spacious.
And there's that image of Daisy and Jordan Baker on this enormous couch, dressed in white.
Like they're floating.
Buoyed up as though upon an anchored balloon, Fitzgerald writes.
It's beautiful, but also kind of unsettling.
It suggests a certain detachment.
Yeah, like they're not quite real.
And then there's Daisy herself. Her laugh, her voice.
That absurd, charming little laugh, it's so distinctive.
And Nick observes how she makes everyone feel like they're the only person in the room.
There's even the suggestion that her murmur is a deliberate tactic.
An irrelevant criticism that made it no less charming.
Exactly, like she's manipulating people without them even realizing it.
It makes you question the sincerity of her charm.
For sure. And then there's Jordan Baker. She's this cool, almost aloof presence.
Stretched out on the couch, barely acknowledging Nick.
Yeah, and Nick even feels like he's seen her before, which adds this whole layer of intrigue.
She's definitely a more enigmatic figure.
And her initial contributions to the conversation are just as intriguing. Her sudden, emphatic, absolutely, when the drinks are mentioned.
And then that claim of being in training.
Like she's got this competitive edge.
Very disciplined, or maybe just self-serving.
And then she just cuts through all the pleasantries with that remark about Nick living in West Egg.
You must know Gatsby.
It's the first real connection to Gatsby, right?
And it immediately piques our curiosity.
Totally. Okay, but things take a darker turn with Tom Buchanan's rant about civilizations going to pieces.
He starts spouting this racist nonsense from that book by Goddard, The Rise of the Colored Empires.
Pushing this whole white supremacist ideology.
It's disturbing.
Deeply. Especially when Daisy echoes him with this sarcastic, we've got to beat them down.
It reveals a real moral vacuum at the heart of their world.
And then, just like that, they switch gears.
To a family secret about the butler's nose.
It's jarring. Like they can't handle anything too serious.
They deflect with trivialities.
Exactly. And then Daisy turns her charm on Nick, calling him an absolute rose.
Which he rightly dismisses.
Of course, it's just another performance.
And then she makes this dramatic exit after Tom's outburst.
Only to reappear later with these cynical pronouncements about having a bad time.
And that infamous line about wanting her daughter to be a beautiful little fool.
It's like she's seen through the facade of their world.
And she's deeply unhappy.
Trapped. Then there's that final image of Tom and Jordan reading the Saturday Evening Post together.
Two very different figures, united by
A shared indifference.
perhaps.
And we learn about the rumor of Netch engagement, which he denies.
And it turns out that rumor is part of why he came east in the first place.
To escape something back home.
To start over.
Just like Gatsby.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about our first glimpse of the man himself. Nick comes home to find Gatsby standing out there in the moonlight, regarding the silver pepper of the stars.
It's such a poetic image.
It is. It creates this immediate sense of mystery. Like he's this...
romantic figure.
Yeah. And there's that line about him coming out to determine what share was his of our local heavens.
It speaks to his ambition, his desire to claim his place in this world.
He's reaching for something.
Absolutely.
Okay, but let's move on to this. Very different setting. This stark contrast to the opulence of the eggs,
So the Valley of Ashes.
that desolate wasteland between West Egg and New York, Fitzgerald's description is so vivid. Bleak dust. The haunting eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckleburg staring down from that billboard.
It's a powerful symbol of the moral decay beneath the surface of all that wealth.
A reminder that everything comes at a cost.
And that some are paying a higher price than others.
Exactly.
It's in this bleak setting that we meet George Wilson.
With his unprosperous and bare garage.
And that dust-covered wreck of a Ford.
The only car he's got, Wilson himself is described as, well, kind of lifeless, right?
Yeah, spiritless, anemic.
Yeah. But there's this flicker of hope in his eyes when Tom and Nick arrive.
Like he sees them as a potential lifeline.
Maybe. Or maybe he's just desperate for any kind of human interaction.
Could be both.
And then there's Myrtle Wilson. She bursts in, immediately fixated on buying a dog.
For their apartment.
Which seems like a strange priority given their circumstances.
It's her way of trying to elevate their status, I think.
To imitate the lifestyle she sees in the eggs.
And Tom's behavior throughout the whole dog buying episode is, well, it's pretty telling.
He's dismissive, controlling.
He treats Myrtle like a possession.
Yeah, which is unsettling.
Definitely.
Their destination is this apartment in the West Hundreds.
A world away from the Valley of Ashes.
And Myrtle has this almost regal homecoming glance as they arrive.
Like she's playing a part.
Exactly. But the apartment itself is this strange mix of aspiration and...
Tackiness.
Yeah. There's this oversized, gaudy furniture, that bizarre enlarged photograph of Mrs. Wilson's mother,
Yeah.
copies of scandal magazines lying around. It's a step up from the garage, but
Still a far cry from the elegance of East Egg.
for sure. And then we have that chaotic party at the apartment. Nick, on his second time ever being drunk, gives us this hazy, almost surreal account.
His perception is definitely skewed.
Yeah, but we still get these vivid glimpses of the characters and their interactions.
Myrtle's sister Catherine arrives.
With her solid, sticky bob of red hair and all those pottery bracelets.
She immediately starts acting like she owns the place.
Which is interesting. And then we have the McKees.
Mr. McKee, the aspiring
He's
photographer.
pale and kind of creepy.
And Mrs. McKee. Shrill, languid, handsome, and horrible.
With that bizarre obsession with having her picture taken.
127 times, she says.
It's also grotesque.
And revealing.
Definitely. And Myrtle herself undergoes this transformation.
With that cream-colored chiffon dress.
She suddenly adopts this haughty attitude, her behavior becoming increasingly exaggerated.
Like she's playing the role of a sophisticated socialite.
But it's also forced.
It highlights the performative nature of social climbing.
And the conversations are just as bizarre. Myrtle complaining about being cheated. Mrs. McKee offering these empty compliments. Mr. McKee trying to pose Myrtle for his art.
And then Catherine drops that bombshell.
About neither of them being able to stand their spouses.
And suggesting they all just swap partners.
It's so casual, like marriage is just a game.
It speaks to a real lack of commitment.
And then there's that whole bit about Daisy supposedly being Catholic.
Which, of course, isn't true.
It just shows how easily they lie. Catherine talks about being cheated out of money in Monte Carlo. Myrtle says she married Wilson because she thought he was a gentleman, but now...
It wasn't fit to lick my shoe.
Harsh. And then we hear about Wilson having to borrow a suit for their wedding.
Which is kind of heartbreaking.
It really is.
And then Catherine casually mentions that Tom is Myrtle's first sweetie.
It's just this whirlwind of messy relationships and social climbing gone wrong.
It's also Audrey.
Yeah. And then things really start to spiral out of control.
More whiskey.
That wild, strident argument that keeps Nick trapped there.
And Myrtle tells the story of her first meeting with Tom on the train.
She was so excited. She kept thinking, you can't live forever.
It's this reckless, almost desperate philosophy.
And then out of nowhere, Tom breaks Myrtle's nose.
It's brutal. Shocking.
It reveals the dark undercurrent of violence in their relationship.
Tom's possessiveness, his need for control.
And everyone else just stands there.
Like it's nothing out of the ordinary.
It's deeply disturbing.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's shift gears. Let's talk about Gatsby's parties.
Those legendary gatherings.
These massive spectacles of wealth and extravagance.
A full orchestra. Cars streaming in from New York. Guests dressed to the nines. Cocktails flowing like water.
As the Roaring Twenties in all its glory.
Then excess.
Absolutely. We get these little vignettes that bring it all to life. Lucille tearing her gown.
And receiving a brand new one from Courier's within the week.
Gatsby's just casually... Then there's Owl Eyes, that drunk intellectual in the library, marveling at the real books with their uncut pages.
Observing that most people were brought to the party, not invited.
It's a subtle but cutting commentary
on the superficiality of it all.
As the night goes on, things get wilder. Italian tenors, jazz singers, champagne flowing from, what were they, those huge glasses.
Bigger than finger bowls, Nick says.
Yeah, it was crazy. And Nick, after a couple of those oversized champagne finger bowls, starts seeing the party as something significant, elemental, and profound.
The alcohol is definitely distorting his perception.
Big time. But it also speaks to the seductive nature of Gatsby's world.
The allure of that. Heightened reality.
For sure. Then Gatsby himself makes this brief appearance.
He excuses himself to take a phone call from Chicago.
And Nick is surprised that Gatsby isn't this larger-than-life figure he imagined.
It adds to the mystery surrounding him.
Definitely. Then Jordan confesses that she prefers large parties because they offer more privacy.
Which is kind of ironic, right?
Totally. And telling. It's like she's always observing, never fully participating.
And then the party descends back into chaos. Weeping singers. Drunken arguments.
People refusing to leave.
And Jordan and Gatsby disappear into the library together.
There's this undercurrent of tension running through the whole night.
Like something's about to snap.
Exactly. And then, at the end, there's that car accident right outside the party.
Involving Owl Eyes, of course.
Who insists he wasn't driving.
It's a fittingly chaotic end to the evening.
Okay, so let's talk about Nick's life outside of these parties. He's working at Probity Trust, going to lunch with clerks, having this brief, rather uneventful affair.
It's a much more mundane existence.
Compared to the world of Gatsby and the Buchanans, he's dining at the Yale Club, studying investments, taking evening walks. He's starting to appreciate the racy, adventurous feel of the city at night.
But he also experiences moments of intense loneliness.
A feeling he sees reflected in other young clerks as well.
It's that paradox of city life.
Being surrounded by people, yet feeling completely alone. Right. His relationship with Jordan Baker starts to develop. He calls her a rotten driver.
And her response is, classic Jordan. They'll keep out of my way. It takes two to make an accident.
So careless. So entitled. And then she says, I hate careless people. That's why I like you.
This is a strange thing to say.
It is. And Nick even thinks for a moment that he might be falling for her.
But he still has those reservations.
About things back home?
It's a complicated situation.
To say the least. Okay, so we need to talk about Gatsby's car.
That rich cream color car.
Described in such lavish detail, it's a symbol of his.
New money.
Yeah, and his need to flaunt it. But here's where things get really interesting. Gatsby asks Nick what he thinks of him.
Out of the blue.
Yeah, like he's desperate for approval.
And then he launches into this story about his past.
About being the son of wealthy Midwesterners, all dead now. About being educated at Oxford.
A family tradition, he says.
But Nick can sense that something's off.
Especially with the way Gatsby delivers that Oxford bit.
It's rushed. Almost choked.
It creates this feeling of unease.
Like we're not getting the whole truth.
Exactly.
And Gatsby seems to sense that Nick isn't buying it. So he revises his story.
Now his family all died, leaving him a huge inheritance.
He adopts this somber tone, and then he talks about his war record.
His rapid promotion to major, all the decorations he received.
Even from Little Montenegro.
Still very repressive.
He even produces medals and a photograph from Oxford. And for a moment, Nick believes him.
He starts to imagine Gatsby's wealth, his past.
But then Gatsby offers this vague explanation for why he's surrounded by strangers.
Trying to forget the sad things that happened to me.
It's like he's deliberately obscuring his past.
Leaving us with more questions than answers.
And then in this very telling moment, Gatsby shows a white card to a policeman.
And gets out of a speeding ticket.
Just like that, it reveals his connections.
Influence.
And maybe something more. Sinister.
A suggestion of illegal activities.
Yeah. And then as they're driving across the Queensboro Bridge, they pass a hearse. And then this limousine with 3 fashionable black people.
It's a brief but striking image.
It highlights the complex social landscape of the time.
The racial dynamics,
Mhm.
stark inequalities.
Okay, so then Gatsby mentions having lunch with this Meyer Wolfsheim.
Anna Gonanton,
And we finally meet this shady character.
described as a small, flat-nosed Jew with expressive nostrils and cuff buttons made from human molars.
It's unsettling, to say the least.
Wolfsheim claims to have made Gatsby.
And then he casually drops this bombshell about fixing the 1919 World Series.
It reveals the depth of corruption.
And the source of Gatsby's wealth.
It's a crucial turning point.
Okay, so now things really start to come together. Jordan reveals the story of Daisy and Gatsby's past romance.
Back in Louisville in 1917.
Gatsby was apparently obsessed with Daisy's house itself.
It represented everything he desired.
Wealth.
Beauty's world.
Jordan tells us that Daisy almost broke off her engagement to Tom after receiving a letter from Gatsby.
Just before he went off to war.
It shows how strong their feelings were.
But Daisy ultimately chose Tom.
The safe choice. The socially acceptable choice.
And she's clearly regretted it ever since.
Yeah. And we learn about the pearls Tom gave Daisy as a wedding gift, about her emotional turmoil before the ceremony.
The pressure she was under.
She had a daughter in April, then spent a year in France before settling in Chicago.
Maintaining this carefully crafted image.
It's a story of lost love and societal constraints.
The forces that shape our choices.
And the consequences of those choices.
Exactly.
So Jordan believes that Gatsby bought that mansion in West Egg to be near Daisy.
And that he's desperate to see her again.
Gatsby then asks Nick about his income, almost out of nowhere.
And offers him a little business on the side through Wolfsheim.
He's trying to buy Nick's loyalty.
And he seems genuinely relieved when Nick turns him down.
Like he respects Nick more for it.
You beat.
So Nick calls Daisy and sets up that tea party at his house.
With the specific instruction not to bring Tom.
It's all very Clandestine.
Like a forbidden romance.
Okay. So the day of the tea party arrives. It's pouring rain. A gardener shows up to cut Nick's lawn.
Courtesy Gatsby, of course.
Flowers arrive. Gatsby himself shows up looking nervous, pale, sleepless. He's a wreck.
It's all so much pressure for him.
Years of longing culminating in this one moment. And right before Daisy arrives, he says, "Nobody's coming to tea, it's too late."
Like he's already given up.
Then Daisy arrives in her big open car with her bright, ecstatic smile and that incredible voice.
She asks Nick this very forward question in the car.
"Are you in love with me? Or why did I have to come alone?"
Bold move.
And then Gatsby walks in and there's this awkward silence.
You can feel the tension.
Daisy says, in this very formal tone, "I certainly am awfully glad to see you again."
It's so forced.
And then this horribly enduring pause.
It's excruciating.
Finally, Gatsby blurts out, "This is a terrible mistake."
He's mortified.
Nick tries to smooth things over, pointing out that Daisy is embarrassed too. Gatsby eventually comes back in, trying to act casual.
Like he hasn't seen Nick in years.
He remarks that the rain has stopped, and Daisy reacts with this almost childlike delight,
It's a sweet moment.
a glimmer of hope.
And then Gatsby starts showing off his wealth.
He says he inherited his money, then contradicts himself, talking about losing most of it and being involved in all these different businesses.
Drugs, oil.
He's clearly trying to impress Daisy, but he's also flustered.
Like a schoolboy with a crush.
He opens these hulking patent cabinets full of clothes.
Shirts, ties, suits. It's an extravagant display.
And Daisy's reaction is heartbreaking. She starts crying, saying, "It makes me sad because I've never seen such beautiful shirts before."
It's a moment of regret.
Yeah, like she's seeing what she could have had.
If she had made a different choice.
That green light on Daisy's dock, which was so important to Gatsby before, now seems insignificant.
It's like the reality of Daisy doesn't live up to the dream.
Exactly. Gatsby shows Daisy a picture of Dan Cody, his best friend years ago.
The man who shaped him in a way.
And then there's that smaller picture of young Gatsby with this ridiculous pompadour standing on Cody's yacht. Daisy laughs. Gatsby quickly shows her some clippings he has about her. Then he takes this mysterious phone call about a small town.
It's a reminder of his present-day
It's
dealings.
the shady side of his life.
Right.
Then Daisy suggests they go look at the clouds. It's a really sweet moment.
Romantic.
And Nick notices this connection between them. The way Daisy's voice washes over Gatsby, he calls it a deathless song.
It's the culmination of Gatsby's years of longing.
And Nick quietly slips away, leaving them alone.
It's what Gatsby's always wanted.
Okay, so now we finally get the full story of Gatsby's past. His real name was James Gatz. He changed it at 17, inspired by Dan Cody's yacht,
He came from a humble background, farm people.
who he never really accepted.
He reinvented himself,
Mm-hmm.
created this persona of Jay Gatsby,
His son of God.
driven by this
Yeah.
idealized vision of wealth and beauty.
His youth was filled with these grand, almost fantastical daydreams.
He went to St. Olaf's College for a while, but
Didn't last long.
he didn't fit in.
And then he met Dan Cody, this millionaire who made his fortune in silver and copper.
Cody took young Gads under his wing.
Gave him a job on his yacht, the Tuolumne.
Gatsby spent the next 5 years working for Cody, traveling the world,
Learning the ways of the wealthy.
and then Cody died, leaving Gatsby.
Free to pursue his own dream.
A dream centered around Daisy.
Exactly.
And then we have that rather awkward encounter with Mr. Sloan and his companion.
They make this insincere invitation to Gatsby for dinner.
And then ride off on horseback without him.
It's a perfect illustration of the snobbery of the old money crowd.
They'll never truly accept Gatsby.
And Tom, witnessing the whole thing, decides he's going to Gatsby's next party
To keep an eye on Daisy.
to assert his dominance.
And the tension just keeps building.
Okay, so Tom's presence at the party definitely changes things.
It creates this oppressive atmosphere.
Nick feels like he's seeing West Egg through Daisy's critical eyes.
And it's not as glamorous as it once seemed.
There's that scene with Miss Baedeker who's completely drunk.
Slumped all over Nick.
Daisy remarks on the number of uninvited guests. And when Tom asks about Gatsby's business, Daisy makes up this story about him owning drugstores.
It's so flimsy.
And then Daisy stares at the music, this song called 3 o'clock in the morning.
The longing look.
Like she's yearning for something more.
And then Gatsby says something that reveals everything.
He wants to recreate the past with Daisy, to go back in time.
To recapture what they once had.
And Nick warns him. He says, "You can't repeat the past."
But Gatsby refuses to believe it.
He says, "Why, of course you can."
It's his fatal flaw.
His unwavering belief in the impossible.
And it leads to his downfall.
Okay, so this is where things really start to unravel. Gatsby fires all his servants to prevent gossip about Daisy's visits. It's the day of the lunch at Daisy's, and it's swelteringly hot. The tension is palpable as Gatsby, Daisy, Tom, and Jordan gather. Tom starts questioning Gatsby about his old sport catchphrase. The wedding march plays from downstairs. A fate erupts about Daisy's love for both men.
It's all coming to a head.
Daisy tearfully admits, "I did love him once, but I loved you too." Gatsby is just stunned. He asks, "You love me too?" And Tom just explodes.
He asserts this connection with Daisy that Gatsby can never understand.
It's brutal. Gatsby insists on speaking to Daisy alone, but she finally admits she can't say she never loved Tom. Tom, sensing victory, becomes even more possessive. Gatsby, in a desperate attempt to win Daisy back, declares that she's leaving Tom. Tom just laughs. He calls Gatsby a common swindler. Daisy, overwhelmed, begs to leave. Tom makes these veiled threats about investigating Gatsby's affairs.
The complete and utter destruction of Gatsby's dream.
And then Tom, in this cruel act of power, tells Daisy and Gatsby to drive home together in Gatsby's car. Nick suddenly realizes it's his 30th birthday.
A poignant detail amidst all the chaos.
The drive back with Tom and Jordan is tense. Tom's acting strangely triumphant. And then they come across the scene of the accident.
Myrtle Wilson.
It's horrific. Tom's initial reaction is cold, almost indifferent. But then he's forced to stop at Wilson's garage, and he sees Wilson's grief. He puts on this show of distress. They go inside, and the description of Myrtle's body is gruesome. Tom tries to get information from the policeman, then leads Wilson into the office.
It's a strange mix of callousness and
guilt.
Maybe.
As they drive away, Tom breaks down. He's actually grieving for Myrtle. It's a strange moment.
It reveals the complexity of his character.
Okay, so Tom assumes Gatsby was driving the car that hit Myrtle. He's relieved that Daisy seems to be handling it okay. And Gatsby is outside the Buchanan's house, keeping watch.
Protecting Daisy.
Even though she doesn't deserve it.
And Nick feels this wave of protectiveness towards Gatsby.
He sees Tom and Daisy through the